welcome to Auto News Talk. It's really great to have you with us for this one. We are trying to make sense of an industry that honestly seems to be redefining itself, changing the rules of the road right under our feet.
Yeah, it really is. The ground is just shifting entirely.
I was looking through the stack of research we have for our conversation, and I just kept coming back to this one idea of the sale,
Right.
like selling a car. It
Yeah.
used to be this really clean finish line. You hand over the keys, you take the money, you shake hands, and that relationship is effectively over, at least until they need a new one in 5 years.
Right, right. That was a classic transactional model. Just clean, simple, and done.
Exactly. But looking at the terrain we're walking through in this episode, from data privacy laws to these massive mechanical software updates, that clean break is, it feels like a total myth. The industry is stuck to the car and to the customer long after they drive off the lot.
You're absolutely right. We really aren't looking at a transaction anymore. We are looking at a full life cycle, a very sticky ecosystem. If you look at the big picture of what we're covering, the responsibilities of the auto industry have just exploded. We're talking about dealers acting as banks, as local gas stations, and even, based on one of the reports we have, as full-blown data security firms.
Which is honestly a terrifying thought. But let's map this out for everyone listening. We aren't just going to rattle off a list of news items. We want to trace this long tail of modern ownership.
Yeah, I like that approach. We could sort of start with the friction happening right now in the used car market, then move into the digital ghosts living in the dashboard, look at the mechanical reality of keeping older tech on the road, and finally, how the physical dealership itself is transforming.
Perfect. So let's start with that friction in the used market, because if you've tried to buy or sell a used car, you know it's a very strange environment right now. And one of the reports we have here from the Vehicle Remarketing Association, the VRA, they flagged this specific issue that they call the aging vehicle park.
Right. And for anyone who isn't steeped in, automotive supply chain jargon, PARC, P-A-R-C, that just refers to the total number of vehicles on the road.
Okay, so aging vehicle park is essentially just a fancy industry way of saying cars are getting old.
Precisely. But the implication of that age is what really matters. Because cars are staying on the road longer, the gap between a good car and a bad car is getting much wider. You might have two cars that are both, say, 5 years old. One was a pristine motorway cruiser, and the other was an inner-city delivery vehicle that's just been absolutely battered.
Right, and historically, you'd spot that difference just by walking around the lot and kicking the tires. But the VRA report points out that the industry has heavily shifted to remote purchasing.
That is the crucial shift. Dealers, wholesalers, and even regular consumers are buying stock they have never physically laid hands on. They're making these massive purchases based entirely on a description on a screen.
And that's where the trust gap really opens up.
Exactly. Subjectivity kills remote deals. If I'm selling a truck and I grade it as clean, but your definition of clean is entirely different from mine.
Then when the truck shows up and has a scratch, the whole deal falls apart.
Exactly. It creates massive friction post-sale. Yeah. So the VRA, alongside CRA, which is the Car Remarketing Association of Europe, they are aggressively pushing for standardized grading.
So they want a universal ruler to measure vehicle condition.
They have to. The documentation makes it really clear that sellers need to align their descriptions with the actual buyer outcome to reduce that friction. If you don't have a common language, a common currency for condition, you are essentially gambling on every remote transaction. But what the VRA documentation doesn't really answer is enforcement. How do you get every independent seller to actually adopt this standard?
Right, that's the big question. But it's interesting because we are so used to looking for physical hygiene, right? Dents, scratches, weird engine noises.
Stuff you can actually see.
Yeah. But there is a new layer of hygiene that is arguably way more dangerous for both the dealer and the consumer: digital hygiene.
Oh, absolutely.
This brings us to the information we have from NAMA, the National Association of Motor Auctions. And I have to be honest, reading through this actually unsettled me a bit. They use a specific phrase to describe the modern vehicle. They call it a data sponge.
It's a vivid image, isn't it? But it's dead accurate. Think about what your car knows about you. If you sync your phone, it has your contacts, your text messages, your call logs. It has your navigation history, which is basically a map of everywhere you live, work, and sleep.
And usually when we trade a car in, maybe we hit factory reset in the settings menu if we even remember to do it. But this NAMA announcement suggests that is nowhere near enough.
No, it's not enough. And more importantly, it might not be legally defensible. MMA is launching this new data deletion and privacy protection certificate. And the driving force for this isn't just, good customer service. It's the UK GDPR.
This comes down to the legal concept of the data controller right. I saw that specific term highlighted in the text.
Yes, and this is a massive liability shift. The very moment a leasing company, a rental agency, or dealership takes that vehicle back, they officially become the data controller in the eyes of the law. They are now legally responsible for the personal data stored on that car's hard drive.
So if they turn around and sell that car to a wholesaler or another customer, and my home address and contact list are still in the dashboard.
That is a data breach. They have effectively leaked your personal sensitive information to a complete stranger. It's really no different than a doctor leaving a filing cabinet full of medical records out on the sidewalk.
Wow, that puts a completely different kind of weight on the dealership. You aren't just liable if the brakes fail on the highway, you're liable if the next owner finds out where the previous owner's kids go to school.
Precisely. And that is why NAMA is pushing so hard for this certificate. It's all about auditability. It isn't enough to just say, oh yeah, I think Dave wiped the system out back. You need a time-stamped, verified log.
The source mentions Privacy for Cars as the first approved supplier for this, right?
Correct. Privacy for Cars provides a platform that generates an actual governance trail, proving the data was explicitly and consistently removed to meet those legal requirements.
It's almost like sterilizing a medical instrument. You need the paperwork to prove it's clean before you hand it to the next patient.
That's the exact standard we're heading toward. But what the AMA announcement doesn't fully answer is the consumer side of this. How can a regular consumer independently verify that their data was actually wiped without just taking the dealer's word for it?
That is a great point. And speaking of things you can't see, we've talked about data and software, but we really can't ignore the physical hardware. Because as much as these cars are computers, they're still 2-ton machines moving at high speeds.
They absolutely are.
And the details we have regarding a recent General Motors recall are a perfect example of just how messy this legacy tech is becoming as it ages.
It is a textbook case study in mechanical complexity. According to the GM Bulletin, they are significantly expanding a recall on their 10-speed automatic transmissions.
And this isn't some niche, small batch issue. We're looking at 43,732 additional SUVs. We are talking about the 2022 Tahoe, Suburban, Yukon, and Escalade. These are the big, heavy haulers.
Right. And the specific technical culprit here is the valve body. That is the component inside the transmission that manages the hydraulic pressure. When that valve body fails, you get incredibly unsafe, harsh shifts, or in the worst-case scenario, the rear wheels can actually lock up entirely while you're driving.
Which is terrifying. But I want to dig into why these specific models are being recalled. Because the report highlights a very specific constraint. It mentions ETRS.
Ah, yes. ETRS, Electronic Transmission Range Select.
So that's GM's version of shift-by-wire.
Exactly. In older vehicles, you had a physical steel cable connecting your shift lever directly to the transmission gears. Now it's all electronic signals. The computer tells the transmission what to do. And because of that interface, the control modules interact in a fundamentally different way than a purely mechanical system.
But there was a twist in this recall story that I found incredibly frustrating. The redo.
Yes, the redo. This is where human error crashes into high-tech complexity. The documentation notes that 1,055 trucks, specifically Silverados and Sierras, have to go back to the dealer.
And these are trucks that already went in to get fixed, right?
Supposedly. They received attention during a prior round of the recall, but they were given the wrong software version.
Wow, so complexity just breeds error.
It does. But there is a nuance in the GM source that I think is the most critical takeaway here. The software update they're deploying, it's not actually a fix.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following. They are recalling the vehicles to update the software, but the software doesn't fix the broken valve body?
Correct. The source explicitly refers to it as a mitigation. The software doesn't repair the wearing hardware. Instead, it monitors it. If the software detects that the valve body is starting to fail, it triggers a limp mode.
Oh, okay. So it just restricts the car.
Right. It limits the speed and prevents aggressive shifting so the wheels don't physically lock up on the highway.
So it's literally a software safety net for a hardware failure.
Exactly. It stops the catastrophic outcome, but it doesn't solve the underlying mechanical wear. And what the GM documentation doesn't answer is when or if a permanent mechanical fix will actually roll out to replace those failing physical parts.
That really encapsulates the state of the industry right now. We have this complex hardware, and we're using software patches to keep it from completely falling apart. It's a Band-Aid.
It is entirely a Band-Aid.
So let's look at the picture we've painted. The cars are incredibly complex and prone to breaking. They are legally risky because of the data they hold. And as the VRA showed us, they are getting harder to grade and value remotely, which leads to the obvious question. How on earth can anyone afford to buy them?
That is the elephant in the room. Prices are stubbornly high, interest rates are elevated, and the traditional paths to buying a used car cash or a standard loan are just getting entirely out of reach for a massive chunk of the population.
And this is where the rollout of the Ameritrust platform caught my eye. Because they are trying to revive something that has historically been a dead end in the industry, which is used car leasing.
It's true. Leasing is huge for new cars. It makes up roughly 25% of the market. But for used cars, the Ameritrust release puts it at roughly 3%. It's basically non-existent.
Why is that? You would think leasing a cheaper used car would be the easiest way to get a low payment.
You'd think so, but it comes down to risk. To lease a vehicle, the bank has to confidently predict its residual value, what it will be worth 3 years down the road. With a new car, that's simple math. With a used car, condition is so volatile, it's hard to predict. Plus, new car leases are heavily subsidized by the OEMs to move metal. Used cars don't have that corporate safety net.
But Ameritrust claims they've cracked this with their new national dealer platform. They're launching what they call dual-path financing.
Yeah, it's a very clever fintech play. The idea is that a dealer submits a single credit application for the customer, and the software instantly returns two decisions side by side, a traditional loan and a lease option.
I notice they use a very specific phrase for this. They call it a penny-perfect quote.
Right, penny perfect. It implies total transparency and accuracy. The dealer can show the customer contract-ready terms based on live data instantly. No back and forth negotiating with the bank.
And the strategic shift here isn't just the tech. It's the target market. They aren't just building this for prime borrowers with 800 credit scores.
No, and that is vital. They are explicitly supporting subprime borrowers.
That seems risky for the bank, but I suppose necessary to move used inventory right now.
It's all about accessibility. If a customer walks in and flat out cannot afford a $600 monthly loan payment on a used SUV, a lease might bring that payment down to, say, $400. It gets them into the car.
Because they're only financing the depreciation, not the entire asset.
Exactly. It lowers the monthly payment without stretching a traditional loan term out to 7 or 8 years, which is how people end up buried in negative equity. And Ameritrust is also addressing the biggest fear consumers have about leasing, which ties right back to our VRA conversation about vehicle condition.
The dreaded turn-in fee, the fear that you hand the keys back and get a surprise bill for $2,000 because of a scratch.
Right. The platform offers leases with no mileage or wear and tear penalties to reduce those turn-in fee concerns. They are intentionally stripping away the friction that scares people. Now, what the platform details don't answer is the exact interest rate markup those subprime lessees are going to face to offset that risk.
Sure, the money has to come from somewhere, but it effectively turns the dealer's finance office into a flexible problem solver. It completely decouples the used car department from the OEM's certified programs.
It does. It gives the dealer total autonomy.
So if we tally this up, the dealer is now a data auditor, a software patch specialist, and a highly sophisticated fintech broker. But there is one more role we have to add to the list. They are physically becoming the local utility company.
Yes. This is the Arnold Clark story, and honestly, this changes the physical footprint at the dealership more than anything else we've discussed.
Arnold Clark Charge just announced they hit a major milestone. They opened a massive charging hub in Wolverhampton, bringing them to 60 public charging sites across the UK. But what jumped out at me wasn't the number of chargers, it was their pricing strategy.
55p per kilowatt hour.
For listeners who aren't closely tracking UK energy grids, give us the context. How aggressive is that?
It is wildly aggressive. The announcement explicitly compares it to the UK national average, which is sitting at 76p per kilowatt hour. Arnold Clark is undercutting the wider market by nearly 30%.
You don't drop your price by 30% if you're trying to maximize your profit margin on electricity. That is a pure loss leader.
100%. It's retail 101. They are buying footfall. These chargers aren't locked behind a gate for service customers. They're open access to all EV drivers. They want someone who maybe doesn't even drive an Arnold Clark vehicle to pull in, plug up, and spend 40 minutes wandering around their lot.
It's brilliant. They are leveraging their existing motor stores because they already own the space and they already have the heavy grid connections. They're just monetizing the dwell time.
It addresses the range anxiety and infrastructure gap for the driver, but for Arnold Clark, it fundamentally changes what a dealership is. It's no longer just a destination for buying a car, it becomes a destination for operating the vehicle. Now, what this specific Arnold Clark announcement doesn't answer is how long they can sustain that 55p price point before market realities force it up.
Right. Is it permanent or just customer acquisition? But either way, it transforms the lot. So, pulling all of this together, the VRA on remote grading, NEMA on data wiping, GM on software mitigations, Ameritrust on subprime leasing, and Arnold Clark building out the grid. It feels like the industry is being stretched in multiple directions.
It really is. And I think if you look across all these sources, you see three major themes emerging. The first is definitely standardization as a survival mechanism. Look at the VRA and NAMA. The VRA is desperately trying to standardize how we physically grade a car so remote buyers trust the process. NAMA is trying to standardize how we delete data so dealers don't get sued under GDPR. The market is just too fragmented to operate on a handshake anymore. They have to create a common language.
That makes perfect sense. What's the second theme?
It's the idea of tech as a band-aid versus tech as a solution.
I see that. GM using a software patch to mitigate a failing physical valve body. That's entirely defensive.
Exactly. It's patching a hole. Whereas Ameritrust is using fintech software to solve an economic problem, affordability, that's offensive. It's proactive technology meant to move the market forward.
And the third theme?
The massive tension between remote speed and physical reality.
That really is the core contradiction of the modern auto industry, isn't it?
It is. We want everything instant and digital. We want the penny-perfect instant quotes from Ameritrust. We want the remote, sight-unseen wholesale buying from the VRA. But the car itself keeps dragging us back to reality. It's heavy, it breaks, and needs a physical valve body. It needs someone to physically plug it into a 55p charger in Wolverhampton.
The digital transaction is sprinting, but the physical machine is just dragging an anchor behind it. The dealer of the future really has to be a hybrid. They have to master the digital side, the fintech, the data wiping, while still managing the messy reality of physical infrastructure and mechanical repairs.
It's a massive mandate. You really can't just be a car salesman anymore.
No, you can't. So as we wrap up this edition of Auto News Talk, I want to leave everyone listening with one final thought specifically around that concept of digital hygiene.
Yeah, that's the one that really sticks with you.
It does. For decades, we've been trained to check the oil. We pick the tires. We look for rust. But the next time you trade in a car or even just return a lease, take a second look at that dashboard screen. Are you completely trusting the dealer to have that NAMA data deletion certificate? Or are you just leaving your entire digital life, your contacts, your maps, for the next owner to find?
It really is the new checking the oil.
Yeah.
And I would add, based on the GM situation, check your own VIN for recalls. Don't assume the last software update actually fixed the hardware. Complexity breeds error.
Complexity breeds error. I think that is the perfect motto for this entire ecosystem. Thank you for joining us for this conversation on Auto News Talk. Make sure to check your lease terms and your data settings.